How's it going, everybody? Hope we're all doing okay today. Back with a brand new video, and when I set off this morning it was lovely blue sky all around, and now it started to rain, so that's just wonderful. Not ideal really, because I haven't really got any proper waterproofs on today, because I thought it was going to be nice and sunny. So hopefully the rain backs off for a little bit. So in today's video I wanted to talk about something that did actually happen, and was an actual historical event. Because obviously on this channel we do a lot of speculative videos about Bigfoot and the paranormal, but this is actually something that happened in real life that could have links to a wild man from around the world. And we're going to be talking about the Dyatlov incident that happened in Russia in 1959, where 9 experienced hikers suddenly vanished and then turned up dead a few days later. So if that sounds like something that you might be interested in, please stick around to find out more. So to give you a little bit of context as to what actually happened in this case, before we dive into the theories of what possibly it could have all been pertaining to. The Dyatlov incident was something that happened on 1st and 2nd of February 1959, and there was a group of 9 college students in the Ural Mountains in Russia, and they were going on a hiking trip, skiing trip, and they vanished without a trace until their bodies were found, and they were all dead. So before this group of students disappeared up into the mountains, they did stay with the Mansai people, who are local tribesmen to the Ural region, who were, you know, regarded as very peaceful people. And that is one of the theories, that perhaps that they were attacked by a band of them in the night. But they were, the point I'm making is that they were the last people that saw these kids alive before they were later found dead. One thing that is obviously highly suspicious about all of this was the fact that these students, they were, you know, considered to be experienced hikers, experienced bush people, and you know, I've shown it before in my videos when I'm doing my bushcraft stuff. Nature obviously can be very, very unpredictable, and it can change at a dime, and it don't matter if you're a novice or if you're, you know, sort of at a guerrilla soldier level of being, you know, good at bushcraft. Nature can quickly humble you. So yeah, something to think about. Alright, so now it's time to talk some theories as to how this tragedy happened, how these kids ultimately met their demise. Now obviously one theory that I am admittedly very biased towards is the wild man theory, that some kind of Bigfoot type creature terrorised, attacked and killed all of these kids, because one body was found with its eyes gouged out as though something had done it, and another body was identified as having several trauma wounds to the skull before the death happened. So it was either that could have been caused by somebody falling down a ravine, perhaps. What's interesting is obviously when the camera was recovered that these, you know, kids had with them, there was one picture that was taken, and it showed a dark, upright, humanoid type figure following them through the forest during the daytime. And, admittedly, when I look at that picture, I think it's very, very grainy. It's out of focus. If you look closely, it does look like somebody's wearing a coat. Was it just one of their own, party members who they'd accidentally taken a picture of? Possibly. And Russia does have their own version of a Bigfoot, of a wild man, and it's called the Almasty. And reports of the Almasty vary in their description, but it's regarded as a very, tall, broad, upright, man-ape type creature, much like many other wild men, Bigfoot type creatures across the world. So who knows, maybe it was a wild man that is to blame for this. Another very popular theory amongst the, tin hat wearing loonies like myself is that this was some kind of UFO activity, because loud noises and bright lights in the night sky had been reported around that time by the locals, maybe the Mansai people that lived there. So yeah, it could have been a UFO abduction, potentially. A very plausible theory, and one that I dare say I think might be the right one, is that this was some kind of military accident. It was known at the time that the Soviets were testing a lot of weapons, explosive weapons, out in these high mountainous regions in Russia. And one of the theories was that these kids had accidentally gotten caught up in some sort of parachute explosive exercise. And of course, these poor kids died, and the military would never, obviously officially, or open up and own up if they had, accidentally caused the death of some students from their, country. So maybe it was some kind of military involvement that was to blame. One thing that I think gets perhaps overlooked is the sort of medical knowledge and facts that are at hand here. And it's that these kids, when their bodies were recovered, none of them were in heavy clothing. So, there were some that were even butt naked, and in their underwear. So what could have caused these, again, experienced hikers, what scared them that much that in the middle of the night they all fled their tents into, minus 20-degree snowstorm weather with hardly any clothes on? And I was talking about this with my dad earlier today, because he used to be a paramedic. That's what he did as a career. And when the body goes into hypothermia, there's a difference between hypothermia and hyperthermia. Hypothermia is when your body temperature decreases, and then hyperthermia is when it increases too quickly. Now, when you suffer hypothermia, it, as I say, it decreases, and as an emergency response, it's almost like turning up the heating on your oven. That's what your body will do. So, and with that comes delirium. You can become delirious. So did these kids suffer with hypothermia, suffer delirium, and then flee off into the night because they weren't thinking straight? I think that's quite a plausible theory in my book. Could be quite likely. A couple of the more sort of minuscule theories about, what caused this. One of them being that this was some sort of intense and passionate lovers' quarrel that had sort of erupted from the group. And that would account as to why a lot of them, all of them were in very little to no clothing, and that drugs and alcohol abuse had been involved. Could be. And then another theory, which I quite like, is the fact that I did read this somewhere, and there had been animal tracks found around the campsite when the authorities arrived, and that the tents had all been ripped open as if by some sort of animal. And I think that the way you could probably answer that is it might have been after these kids died, and then into the next day maybe a bear had wandered by and been very curious and inspected the campsite looking for food, maybe, because it does happen as that with bears. It's not all around the world that they can be quite inquisitive, going into human campsites looking for food. So that's one. That theory does also, of course, pertain to the wild man theory. Some people think those footprints might have been from a wild man. And, we've not really talked much about the dangerous aspects of Bigfoots. The fact that they are capable of harassing, attacking and killing us. It has been reported as that from all around the world. And I've always had this thought in my mind about Bigfoots, that if there is anything that we do share in common with them, it's that, most of them are good. In your life, you will meet a lot of people, and most of them, for the most part, are good. They're good people. But a couple of them aren't. There's a few of them that are bad, and that's what Bigfoots are like, I think. I think most of them are good, and obviously they want to stay hidden and elusive and out of our way. But there's just a few of them that have essentially gone rogue, if you like. And they're the ones that, could account for when people just go missing. Experienced bushcraft people, hikers, out in the, back and beyond, park rangers, people that are paid professionally to manage nature and wildlife. And they disappear without a trace. No bodies found, no clothing's ever found. They just like the ground has swallowed them up. So it could, that, big rogue Bigfoot activity could account for those kinds of disappearances. I think ultimately for me, at the end of the day, when you kind of reach the end of this case, leaves you with more questions than it does answers. For me it does anyway, because it will never be truly determined what happened to those kids. It's a tragedy. The loss of any human life is a tragedy. Even though it was, it was a long time ago. My parents weren't even alive when it happened. But it's still sad that something scared them all that much for them all to flee, aimlessly into the night. I think if I had to really, if someone had a gun to my head, that's my opinion what happened, I would lean more towards the hypothermia argument. Hypothermia and delirium had set in, and that's what caused them to, flee into the night. So yeah, that was the Dyatlov Pass. Hard word to pronounce is that. And I think I will leave it there for today, guys. I'm just going to kick back now and enjoy the fire and have a nice brew. And yeah, like I was saying in my big cat video, hoping to get some more videos done this week on different subjects, so stay tuned for those. Please leave a like or a comment if you have your opinion as to what happened in this incident. I'd love to know. Subscribe if you already haven't. I really appreciate that. And I'll see you all further on down the line. Bye bye, everyone.